It was only in the last few decades that ADHD entered our modern vocabulary. Yet despite this, it seems like everyone is talking about it, especially on TikTok.
Here's 5 signs you might have undiagnosed ADHD.
And you can't help but wonder, wait, do I have that too?
There's been a shift in our modern culture where it seems like everyone has either self-diagnosed or undiagnosed ADHD. And it's not just me noticing this.
Like, the seriousness of ADHD is a lot less now. I feel like it's almost like a throwaway. It's almost a bit of a personality trait now. It's like, it's normal for ADHD to be a personality trait, but it's like a mental health condition.
Things flipped from stigma to some sort of, I don't know if it's glamorization or maybe it's an identity, but it became cool.
So I want to understand why it seems like the whole of Gen Z now has ADHD, and how TikTok has shifted ADHD away from a serious mental health disorder into this quirky personality trait. ADHD rates have been rising for decades, even before the days of social media. The proportion of US children and teens with ADHD has risen from 6.1% in 1997 to over 10% by 2016. And with that rise, more people are taking ADHD medications. But around 2020, something changed, and there was a rapid surge in the number of new ADHD cases, along with the prescription of ADHD meds. And if we look at data from Google, this was also around the same time when more people than ever before started to search, "Do I have ADHD?" So what changed, and is TikTok really to blame? Well, I think a good place to start is what actually is ADHD. Throughout the years, the exact definition of ADHD has been unclear, and the first description I could find was back in 1798 by Scottish physician Sir Alexander Crichton. He noted the incapacity of attending with necessary degree of constancy to any one object, basically describing people that struggle to concentrate. And then later in 1902, British paediatrician Sir George Frederick Still noted an abnormal defect of moral control in children. But it was only later in 1987 that ADHD was first officially recognised as a mental disorder. And that was in a book known as the DSM, which stands for
Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders. It lists, classifies, and defines the full range of what are generally considered to be mental disorders.
That's psychiatrist Dr. Ralph Lewis. I spoke with him to better understand what ADHD is.
ADHD is characterized by several manifestations of inattentiveness with or without hyperactivity and impulsivity.
And with each iteration of the DSM, there's been a better understanding. It's currently in its 5th edition and was last updated in 2013.
Right, so according to the DSM-5 criteria, there are 9 examples or manifestations of inattentiveness, and you need to have 6 out of 9 of them for at least 6 months.
And that can include things like being easily distractible, misplacing important items, forgetfulness, and struggling with organization.
The same thing for the hyperactivity and impulsivity criteria, 6 out of 9 for at least 6 months.
Examples of hyperactivity includes constantly fidgeting, difficulty staying still, and talking excessively, while examples of impulsivity include interrupting others and blurting out answers.
Also, it's a requirement that many of these manifestations would have been present before age 12, because it is really considered a lifelong set of characteristics, not something that we would expect to just develop.
Many of the ADHD symptoms are fairly relatable and we all often experience. So what distinguishes ADHD from everyday experiences is the severity and consistency of those behaviors, to the point where it negatively impacts our day-to-day functioning. But a lot of the content I see on social media misses this nuance, and common relatable behaviors such as fidgeting or procrastination are being shared as definitive signs of ADHD.
Here are 6 ADHD behavior traits that you might not have known about.
And the first trait is that we will re-watch our favorite shows and movies nonstop.
You're either 100% in something or you're not in it at all. There's no middle ground.
Another tell is volume control. For as long as I've known, my voice can go really, really high sometimes, like dramatically, and I've no idea why.
So to understand this dynamic, I needed to speak with someone who understands Gen Z better than I do.
I think what a lot of people are forgetting is, like, you can have traits of ADHD but not have actual ADHD. Hi, I'm Christina. I'm a medical doctor and YouTuber making videos for Gen Z who feel lonely, including people pleasers, overachievers, and overthinkers. But I think there is a sense of belonging when these little quirks that you have that cause you to procrastinate or be a little bit more disorganized, when you find out that there's like a bubble that this belongs to.
This is known as the Barnum effect, a psychological phenomenon where people believe a personality description applies specifically to them more so than anyone else, despite the description actually being generic and could apply to anyone. It's similar to horoscope readings where vague and general statements are presented in a way that is personally tailored to whatever star sign you are.
It's important to appreciate that the symptoms of ADHD that you came across on the TikTok video are common, probably really universal difficulties that all humans have, and it's really a question of whether you have very many of these difficulties to a much greater degree than most other people.
And we measure that degree by assessing someone's executive function. Our executive function is made up of various everyday skills and abilities that we don't even notice. Things like our ability to plan, staying organized, making decisions, multitasking. Generally, the population is distributed along the executive function spectrum like this. Some people may be excellent planners, are very organized, don't get distracted easily, so would have better executive function than others, hence fall within the right side of the spectrum. But some people may struggle with those things and fall to the left side. It doesn't mean that everyone who falls to the left side of the curve has ADHD. They may have ADHD-like traits, but really the people with ADHD are the minority where those symptoms are causing significant impairment in their ability to function with life's tasks.
Basically, we're trying to identify approximately 10% or less of the population where this is really impairing and in a way that is essentially lifelong.
Someone may think they have ADHD because they're struggling at work. They may be forgetful, procrastinate, misplace important documents, and generally just feel overwhelmed. They may have a lower executive function in a work environment that falls into the diagnostic ADHD threshold. But actually, if you take a step back, that person manages their own household chores and keeps their room fairly tidy. They're great at navigating social settings and maintaining friendships. So they actually have normal to high executive function in other areas of life. People with ADHD equally struggle at work, at home, and socially, and this is often lost or forgotten in much of the ADHD content I see. Do you think Gen Z and TikTok has turned ADHD into like this quirky trend almost?
Quirky trend. I do think it's becoming a lot more common. Like the amount of content creators now that are like doing like funny dances on signs of ADHD and characteristics of ADHD. I think it can create a huge echo chamber. Like the way TikTok is designed is if you consume 1 or 2 ADHD videos and watch it all the way to the end, it's going to show you a whole bunch more.
This also amplifies our own confirmation bias, our natural human tendency to favor information that already confirms our pre-existing beliefs. The TikTok algorithm showing you more and more ADHD content only strengthens your belief that you have ADHD. And unfortunately, much of the ADHD content on TikTok is misinformed. One study looked at the top 100 most popular ADHD videos on TikTok and found that 52% of videos were classified as misleading, often misrepresenting ADHD symptoms or treatment approaches and lack scientific backing. And only 21% were categorized as useful, offering scientifically accurate information. And if videos aren't trying to convince you have ADHD, it feels like they're trying to give you ADHD.
It's in their best interest as a social media platform. The way that they make money is if people are on their phones as much as possible. So I guess they're orchestrating the algorithm and the platform to make sure that your screen time is as long as possible, even if that's to your detriment and it means that you're less productive or less organized in your own life. It benefits them.
Short form content is designed to be fast paced and attention grabbing, from the infinite scrolling, constant clickbait, and epilepsy inducing editing.
If a video doesn't hook you in the first 3 seconds, people swipe away. Yeah, so sometimes you see videos of someone giving like some really helpful information, like a TED talk or like a podcast snippet, and they'll split it, the screen, so the top half is them talking and then the bottom half's like a Subway Surfer game or Temple Run or something, and it just makes you like want to watch it for longer because there's 2 things going on at once.
It's training our brain to expect new stimuli every few seconds, reducing the ability to focus on a single task for longer periods. And there are tons of Reddit posts of people sharing their experience of how TikTok has completely destroyed their attention span. But of course, we have to be fair because ADHD rates have been rising even before the days of social media. Perhaps something else about the way we're living today is making more and more people think they have ADHD.
The society we've created favors people with long attention spans, high attention to detail, and patience and persistence, and disadvantages people who need novelty, excitement, stimulation, variety, adventure, adrenaline, and so on.
The world we live in today demands constant attention and multitasking. There's an increased demand for employees to manage large volumes of information, prioritize tasks effectively, meet tight deadlines, and maintain high productivity levels. Modern education systems often prioritize standardized testing and structured learning environments that require sustained attention. The cultural shift towards fast living, from quick news cycles to instant digital communications, can be hard for anyone to keep up with. Society has shifted to favour those with high executive function, and those on the lower end of the spectrum may find themselves increasingly marginalised. This societal structure can make the symptoms of ADHD more apparent and disabling, leading more people to feel like they have an ADHD diagnosis.
We have shorter attention spans for sure, like not just online but even offline as well. I feel like there's less and less people reading books nowadays, or less and less people reading newspapers and things like that. Broadly, as a society, we have a shorter attention span, but that itself doesn't qualify as a trait to ADHD.
ADHD is not a black and white diagnosis. It's made after careful and thoughtful clinical examination by a licensed health professional. Self-diagnosing based on TikTok videos you watch online, along with the telehealth companies facilitating the prescription of ADHD meds for profit,
fraud scheme distributing more than 40 million pills of Adderall and other prescription stimulants, whether or not patients qualified,
has serious consequences for those who are severely struggling. An increased awareness and destigmatization is amazing to help those most in need, but I do wonder if those TikTok dances and the casualness of associating ADHD as a personality trait diminishes the seriousness of the disorder and belittles those on the end of the spectrum who are really struggling.
You shouldn't kind of ignore the seriousness of some of these health conditions, mental health conditions, because they are really, really important. And I think, like you said, there's people suffering from them to a more serious extent. And even though we have more awareness of them from TikTok and Instagram, we shouldn't forget that these are quite serious at the end of the day.
ADHD is still hugely underdiagnosed, especially in females and ethnic minorities. One study reported that black children in the United States were 70% less likely to receive an ADHD diagnosis than otherwise similar white children. So, as a final message, the more awareness of any mental health condition, the better. But I think as a society, we need to be mindful in how we use our vocabulary and how we reference the term ADHD online and in conversations. There are people really struggling with ADHD and need help, but by referencing ADHD as a personality trait or nonchalantly saying you have ADHD after watching a TikTok video, we run the risk of hindering and preventing help to those who most need it. This video is not intended to belittle anyone's experience or struggles, and if you are questioning whether you have ADHD, then please book a consultation with your local registered health professional. I've attached all the references that went into making this video in the description below, and I've also included a mental health crisis hotline for anyone who may need immediate support. Thank you for getting to the end of the video, and please subscribe and like this video to help support the channel. You can watch my previous video I made on the rise of early onset cancer and why so many young people are getting cancer here. Until next time, and see you soon.